In the ancient wetlands where time itself seemed to creep along, the Deinosuchus reigned supreme, a colossal behemoth that ruled its domain with an iron grip. The sun, a mere sliver on the horizon, cast an eerie golden hue over the murky waters, heralding the arrival of a new day. With each passing moment, the world awakened from its slumber, and the air grew thick with the primal calls of prehistoric creatures, their voices echoing through the swamps like an ageless symphony. Amidst this primal tapestry, the Deinosuchus emerged from the depths, a leviathan adorned in armored scales and armed with dagger-like teeth. It was the undisputed apex predator of these ancient waters, an enduring symbol of power and dominance. But our tale doesn't commence with the mighty Deinosuchus. Instead, it unfolds in the dead of night with the birth of a hatchling, an unlikely hero in a world of giants. Under the cover of darkness, we enter this unforgiving realm, surrounded by much larger, toothy beasts. Miraculously, they refrain from spawn killing us, allowing us to make a hasty escape onto the safety of land. We'll traverse across the center plains to increase our chances of survival. We're in search of an easy meal, dead or alive. Along the nearby cliffs of the center plains, we find our first meal, killed by way of gravity. We happily consume all of it and then continue on our way. We were headed to far safer waters for a fresh spawn like ourselves, probably my favorite location in all of Spiro, the Northwest Waterfall. The water there was never populated by other Deinosuchus. Because of the really low population of fish to eat, we were going to risk not having enough food to gain the benefit of not being eaten by others. We could always survive on schooling fish, even if they didn't provide nutrients, as well as scavenge meals from the nearby plains. Just off the way, we smell the bone remains of a recently deceased dinosaur. Bones provide us with all 3 types of nutrients, which, if we can activate the bonus, will increase our growth rate by 50%. For an apex, this means cutting out hours of growth time. It wouldn't be long after that light snack when we'd come across the large rock barrier that shields our favorite little body of water, a beautiful deep creek that washed out into the great delta on the northern coast of Spiro. Right away, we smelled the scent of meat by the coast, a good sign there were other players about. As we investigated the dead compy, we noticed something small and agile atop the rocks. We still had plenty of room in our bellies, so we pursued the little thing atop the waterfall cliffs. It ran and tried to hide from us, but not well enough. We dove from the cliff into the water, snatching the little Troodon on the way down, a well-deserved snack for a successful first hunt. As we devoured the little snack, one of the organs glitched out and got stuck to us, forcing us to have to re-log. We do so quickly, leaving ourselves underwater. Lucky for us, just as we re-logged and started to resurface, we noticed something coming down from the forest. We waited in ambush as a baby Sarah came down to the river, following the scent of the compy and Troodon remains. He was a cautious little guy, but we were patient. And strike just as he steps up. He was so small though, it was only another bite. Still not enough to fill our nutrients and give us the buff that we wanted. After that, we AFK'd in a bush for a bit too long and ended up hurting ourselves with dehydration. As we rested by a river, Pteranodon decided to use us as a shield from the dangers of the water. Since we decided not to eat him, his entire colony joined him. They weren't exactly on our diet, so we didn't see a need to eat them. We also enjoyed watching the little guys flap around. We even grabbed some schooling fish to help out the little ones. Dance, 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 dance. As we raised our very own flock of Pteranodon, we smelled nutrients we needed for our buff. It appeared like a young one found the end of the line after a sudden stop. We knew an easy way down and decided to risk dehydration on the beach for an easy meal. Everywhere we went, the pterosaurs were sure to follow. It was quite entertaining, to say the least. While we feasted on the remains, another meal decided to deliver itself right into our mouths. A young Sarah was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and became another snack. All of this was just barely able to sustain us, but not enough to grant us the 50% growth buff that we so desperately wanted. As we waddled back up the beach to our little river paradise, slowly dehydrating to death, the server announced a restart. We logged off, and that would be the last time we ever saw our pet pteranodons. We'd re-log in several hours later and waddle down to the river, where we happily rehydrated. We then rested up underneath the waterfall to regain our health, and AFK grew while our stomach still had food. When we were fully healed, we decided it was time to move up the river. We smelled some bone remains we could scavenge, and we were now big enough to catch larger prey. Our next hunting spot was one we passed on the way to this paradise. At the edge of the Great Cavern, there exists a bend in the river that most players consider a safe place to drink. We were gonna bank on them letting their guard down, becoming an easy meal for us. When we arrived at the new spot, we smelt food again. The cliffs of this cavern were merciless, but for the floor dwellers like me, the Sky Food delivery service was something to be cherished. This time, we find a young Stegosaurus deceased, a meal to fill us up, but just not enough to activate that buff yet. We stumble through the forest and find ourselves on the receiving end of the gravity falls treatment and break our leg, a minor inconvenience. Even though we are injured, we finish cleaning up the leftovers of the forest before we find a nice spot on the side of the river to rest off our injury. The dawn's light began to cast long shadows across the river's length when we finally healed up. As we settled into the water, we noticed a beast coming down to the river's edge for a morning drink. We wasted no time in starting the hunt. Our first strike misses as he catches sight of us before we're close enough to strike, but we don't end our pursuit there. We won't catch him in a straight up sprint, so we decide to see if we can bait him in by showing him our tail. And then another good bite to the Sarah's body. He finally gets greedy and tries to fight us head on, and finds out how powerful juvenile Deinosuchus' jaws already are. With this delicious meal, we'd finally be able to fill up our nutrients and get the 50% growth buff we've been craving. While we rehydrated at the river's edge, a young Omniraptor helps himself to a piece of our meal. We wanted to save some to bait the river, so after a couple of bites for him, we retrieve our prize and head back into the murky waters to lay wait for our next meal. It wouldn't be long till an ignorant Carnotaurus ran right by us and threw caution to the wind. We play with the foolish beast, dragging him to the depths of the water, and then pulling away to watch him suffer. A cruel way to die. After devouring the Carnotaurus, we retreat to the water and relax once again at the water's edge. We had now reached subadult growth and would begin to grow exponentially stronger. Our next victims were a pair of cautious Sarahs who attempted to cross the river. These wouldn't be much more than a bite for us, so we opted to just give them a real good scare instead. Get. After our fun in the sun scaring the souls from young Sarah's bodies, we make our way south for bigger waters. We're curious what's happening in the big swamp. We devour fish along the way to satiate our hunger and swim all night long until we finally arrive at our destination. The journey was entirely uneventful. In the swamp we fill up on fish, as there's not much else around. But we do adopt a couple small Deinosuchus. In exchange for me not eating them, they bring me fish to fill up my stomach. A very amicable relationship if we do say so ourselves. We spend a day or so here lounging around with the little ones before we make our way back north and out of the swamp. Along the way we run into a surprise at the river's edge. A herd of herbivores meets a pack of hungry gators. Luck was on the young Stegosaurus' side as he teleports out of the jaws of death not once but twice and escapes back onto land. Though they were still thirsty and needed to risk the water again, we waited patiently for another shot. Mama Stego wallops us really hard in that engagement, costing us nearly half of our health. We'll opt for a slightly more strategic approach on our next attempt. While the little dinos distract the mama, we sneak up the bank of the river and around her defenses to try and get to the easier targets in the back. And when we were in an optimal position, we sprung our attack and charged at our victim. Unfortunately, we ran out of stamina before we could fully claim him into the water. And although heavily damaged, he made his escape from the river's edge once again. We were heavily damaged from this hunt, and with no food, life was going to get a bit more challenging for our dino pack. We pulled ourselves up on the opposite bank of the river and began to heal off the wounds from our last engagement. The Stegos won this time. We would need to seek out another hunt as soon as we could to avoid starvation. It was in the early hours of sunlight when our next opportunity presented itself. A rather sizable omniraptor came down to our shores to hydrate. We moved in quietly as a pack, eager to make a kill. The Omniraptor was from the Leaf, as he quickly used substitution jutsu to replace himself with one of my packmates and released himself from the jaws of death. We're not sure whether to be amazed or disappointed at the scene that just transpired. We ventured towards the heart of the wilderness, a pack of ravenous Deinosuchus, driven by our insatiable hunger. Our numbers had grown significantly, and each member of our pack was a force to be reckoned with. Guided by the echoing chuffs of Ceratosaurus and the scent of death that saturated the central plains, we pressed forward. The primal sounds and the unmistakable aroma of carrion drew us closer to the epicenter of the unfolding drama in this untamed land. One among us attempted to lure them towards the river, but our impatience got the better of us and we launched our attack prematurely. Rather than retreating, we pressed onward into the hills, igniting a monumental clash of roars. A colossal pack of Ceratosaurus faced off against an equally imposing assembly of Deinosuchus in a battle of dominance. The Great Roar War, if you will. Amidst the fierce battle, one of our formidable Deinosuchus comrades succumbed to the fray. In solemn tribute to honor our fallen ally, we sated our hunger with part of their flesh before resolutely returning to the fight, driven by our burning desire for vengeance and food. In the second round, we utterly decimated a fully grown Ceratosaurus without a hint of mercy, and afterward, we paid our respects in a fitting manner. Yeet! After extracting our vengeance and enduring a few more skirmishes, we ultimately drove the Ceratosaurus force away, securing the battlefield for our mighty Deinosuchus megapack. Here, under the open sky, we feasted and rested to our heart's content, basking in the glory of triumph in the Great Roar War. It was a long journey from our humble beginnings as a hatchling in our own pond. Having not only survived, but thrived to become the leaders of our own dino pack felt like a gratifying conclusion to our adventure. So here, on the blood-soaked hills of battle, we closed our eyes on the victorious Deinosuchus and embraced the peace of hard-fought victory. We thank you immensely for taking the time to watch this video. If you've enjoyed the content, we'd greatly appreciate you hitting the like button. Subscribing is also an amazing way to show your support. Yeet!